The sun dipped below the horizon of the alien world, casting a faint orange glow over the shimmering city. The air buzzed with the sound of distant ships flying overhead, and the occasional hum of energy fields protecting the royal palace. Inside the grand palace walls, everything was calm, but there was an uneasy tension in the air. Private Marcus Hayes stood near the grand entrance, his stance firm, eyes scanning the surroundings. He had been stationed on this alien world as part of the human peacekeeping force. He wasn't like the soldiers he'd served with back on Earth. He was a guardian, a protector of peace, assigned to defend those who needed him, even if it meant standing alone. Today, it meant guarding Empress Arithia, the leader of the alien world, during her most important meeting with her people. Marcus had seen many strange things in his years of service, but nothing quite like this. The Empress was different from the alien leaders he had encountered before. Tall, regal, and commanding, Zarithia's presence was unlike anything he had ever felt. Her people, an ancient species known as the Varithians, were proud and technologically advanced, yet their society was full of conflict and power struggles. Despite all that, she held the reins of power firmly, but only with a fragile alliance of different factions. Zarithia had invited Marcus to stand beside her during this crucial moment, a decision he had never expected. He was a soldier, nothing more. He was here to do his job and protect her, nothing else. Still, he couldn't deny that there was something captivating about her, a certain vulnerability beneath her fierce exterior. She had called upon Marcus because the peace talks with the rival factions were precarious. The danger had been growing, and now the time had come to face it head-on. The conference room where the talks were set to occur was dimly lit, its walls lined with intricate alien carvings and soft glowing panels. Zarithia stood at the head of a large oval table facing the leaders of the rival factions, her eyes cold and calculating. The air crackled with tension as the factions began to argue, their voices rising in anger. Marcus could see the energy in the room shift. These weren't just simple talks, they were life-or-death negotiations, where the slightest mistake could lead to war. The tension had grown palpable, and Marcus knew that anything could happen. He was ready. Despite the noise, Marcus's focus remained unbroken. His hand rested on the sidearm at his belt, his other hand gripping the edge of the table. Every instinct told him to be ready, to stay vigilant. Something felt off. He had trained for moments like these, but this time felt different. The guards, positioned strategically around the room, exchanged worried glances, their eyes darting toward the doors as if expecting something to happen. Marcus could sense their unease too, but he didn't allow it to distract him. The debate grew louder, and just when it seemed like it might come to a head, the lights in the room flickered. At first, it was so subtle that only those closest to the walls noticed it. But then, the low hum that had accompanied the flicker intensified, and Marcus's instincts kicked in. He turned sharply toward the source, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't the only one who noticed. The guards, once calm and collected, began to shift uneasily. Their hands hovered near their weapons, their eyes constantly scanning the room. Marcus felt the change immediately. The calm had been replaced with fear, a fear that spread like wildfire among the ranks of the guards. And then, the doors burst open. A group of rebels stormed into the room, their weapons drawn. They wore dark, inconspicuous clothing, and their faces were covered with masks, making them nearly impossible to identify. Chaos erupted. The Empress, unfazed at first, raised her hands, signaling for calm. But the rebels were not interested in peace. Their leader, tall and imposing, stepped forward, glaring at Zarithia as if she were nothing more than a figure to be toppled. "Your time has come, Empress," the leader shouted. "Your reign ends now!" The guards around the room froze, panic flashing in their eyes. One by one, they hesitated, and then, like a wave crashing on the shore, they began to back away, retreating toward the exit. Their mission was to protect the Empress, but their fear had overtaken their duty. In an instant, the palace's elite security force was no longer present to defend her. Marcus could see it clearly. The guards were abandoning their posts. The human soldier's heart raced. He couldn't allow this to happen. He knew his only choice was to stand in the gap, to be the protector she needed. Without thinking, he stepped forward, placing himself directly in front of the Empress. His hand went to his sidearm, and his gaze locked onto the rebel leader. "Stay behind me, Your Majesty," Marcus ordered, his voice firm. "I'll protect you." Zarathia's eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. But Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. The words didn't matter now. He had made his decision. The rebels raised their weapons, preparing to fire. But Marcus wasn't afraid. He was a soldier, and he had made a vow. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. His mind raced, planning his next move. He wasn't going to let them harm her, not while he still had breath in his lungs. In one swift motion, Marcus drew his weapon and fired. A single shot rang out, striking the rebel leader's weapon and sending it flying from his hand. For a split second, there was silence. Then, all at once, the chaos began again. The rebels moved quickly, taking cover behind the pillars and furniture scattered throughout the room. They fired relentlessly, trying to overwhelm Marcus, but he was quick and precise, ducking behind the table and using it as cover. His mind was sharp, his reflexes honed to perfection. He had faced countless battles before, but this was different. This wasn't a fight for survival. This was a fight to protect the future of an entire galaxy. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the room. It was a brutal dance of life and death. Each move was calculated. Each breath was taken with the knowledge that it could be his last. But Marcus didn't care. His focus remained solely on the Empress, making sure she was safe. Zarithia, stunned by the sudden onslaught, remained behind the table, her hands clutching the edge. She watched in disbelief as the human soldier protected her with his body, his every movement a testament to his commitment. For the first time, she saw the depth of his loyalty. And for the first time, she began to question everything she had ever known about humanity. The firefight in the room raged on, the sharp electric hiss of plasma shots echoing against the stone-like walls. Marcus didn't pause for a moment. His senses were on high alert, every inch of his body tuned to the chaos around him. The rebels, though outnumbered, were well-armed and determined. Their leader, now disarmed, shouted orders, pushing them forward with ruthless urgency. Behind the table, Empress Zarithia remained still, her back pressed against the cold surface, her eyes wide. She had never seen anything like this. Her people were warriors, yes, but the sheer ferocity with which Marcus fought was something foreign to her. A human soldier willing to stand against impossible odds to protect her. Marcus fired again, his shots quick and precise. The first rebel who appeared from behind a pillar fell to the floor with a silent thud. But there was no time to celebrate. Another rebel popped up from the opposite side of the room, taking a shot that grazed Marcus's arm. The sting of the wound was sharp, but it didn't slow him down. His body moved instinctively, sliding behind cover and returning fire with deadly accuracy. She had faced countless political intrigues, rebellions, and assassination attempts over the years, but this was different. Her gaze flickered to Marcus as he fought with unwavering determination. His actions were not just those of a soldier. They were those of someone who had made a choice, someone who had pledged his life to her safety without hesitation. A quick glance across the room revealed the state of the other guards. They had fled, leaving her to the mercy of the rebels. How had things gotten so out of hand? She had trusted them, relied on them to protect her, but they had abandoned her at the first sign of danger. Another rebel fired, the shot narrowly missing Marcus's head. The force of it sent a shower of sparks from the wall behind him. Marcus ducked down, gripping his weapon with both hands, eyes darting around for the next move. His mind was calculating, always a step ahead. "Stay down, Your Majesty!" Marcus shouted, his voice calm but urgent as he took another shot, taking out the rebel who had fired at him. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not for a second. The Empress nodded, her mind racing. Ji was not a soldier, but she could see that Marcus was handling the situation with a coolness that was almost unnatural. He moved like a man who had seen countless battles, his every action deliberate and precise. But the rebels were relentless. More poured in from every direction, forcing Marcus into a defensive posture. The room that had once felt vast and elegant now felt like a cage, with the walls closing in around them. The heavy furniture that had once served as a symbol of opulence now became a makeshift barricade, offering little more than temporary protection. With a grunt, Marcus moved again, his arm reaching for the door control hidden in the corner. His fingers hovered over the button, but before he could press it, a rebel emerged from a shadowed alcove. The man's gun was aimed directly at Marcus, but the soldier reacted faster, spinning to the side and firing a shot that struck the rebel's shoulder. The man staggered back, a brief shout escaping his lips before he collapsed. Marcus's breathing was heavy now. The adrenaline had begun to wear off, and the exhaustion was starting to set in. His arm, still bleeding from the previous shot, throbbed painfully, but he ignored it. There was no time to tend to wounds.
The only priority was protecting Zarethia. A strange silence suddenly fell over the room.
Marcus paused, his eyes scanning the chaos, his weapon held at the ready. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall, slow and deliberate. The rebel leader Varric appeared, his presence unmistakable. His tall frame loomed in the doorway, and his cold eyes locked onto the Empress.
Zarethia!
Varric's voice was laced with venom. You're a fool if you think you can survive this. Your reign is over.
Marcus stepped forward, his weapon aimed at Varric. Not today, he said with a calm that surprised even himself.
Varric smiled, the cruel twist of his lips sending a chill down Marcus's spine. You're a human, a soldier.
You don't belong here. You can't protect her.
I'm not here to protect her, Marcus responded. I'm here to protect everyone from you. With a wave of his hand, Varric signaled to the remaining rebels, who began to encircle the two of them. But Marcus was ready. He was outnumbered, but he wasn't outclassed. His movements were fast, fluid, as he ducked and weaved, dodging plasma shots and returning fire with deadly accuracy. One by one, the rebels fell, their bodies hitting the ground with sickening thuds. But Varric remained standing. The rebel leader moved with purpose, never flinching, his eyes fixed on the Empress, as if he could already see his victory in his mind. Zarethia was no longer the passive figure she had been at the start of this fight. She watched Marcus's every move, her mind processing the situation. She realized that she could not afford to be passive anymore, not while Marcus fought for her life. With a swift motion, Zarethia stood up from her hiding place, her hand reaching for the concealed weapon she had hidden beneath her robes. It was a rare ancient weapon, one only used by the Empress in times of great need. Her people didn't know she had it, but now it was the only thing that could help them. The weapon's design was simple yet deadly, an energy blade capable of slicing through even the toughest armor. Zarethia ignited it, the blue glow illuminating her face with a fierce intensity.
Stay down, Empress,
Marcus called out again, but she ignored him. Her eyes met his for the first time in what felt like forever.
There was no fear in them, only determination.
I will fight too, she said, her voice steady. I will not hide while you protect me. Marcus knew there was no arguing with her once her mind was set. He turned back to face Varric, the fire in his eyes matching hers. The room became a blur of motion. Marcus and Zarethia fought side by side, each one covering the other. Varric tried to overpower them, his movements fast and precise, but Marcus was quicker, more agile. Every shot he fired, every move he made was calculated. He fought not just for survival, but for something more, something he hadn't realized until this very moment. Zarethia's weapon hummed in the air as she slashed through the remaining rebels, her strikes swift and unyielding. Her confidence had grown, her eyes now burning with the fire of a true leader. Together they made an unstoppable team. The rebels were no match for their combined strength. In moments, Varric was the only one left standing, his face contorted in anger as he tried to outmaneuver them. "You think you can stop me?" Varric sneered, raising his own weapon in a final desperate move. But Marcus was already on the move, closing the distance between them with quick, powerful steps. In one fluid motion, he knocked the weapon from Varric's hand and disarmed him. Varric's defiance turned to fear as Marcus grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall. "It's over," Marcus said, his voice low and final. Zarithia stepped forward, her weapon still glowing. She looked down at Varric with an expression that was cold and resolute.
"It is over, Varric," she said, her voice unwavering. "You lost.
And now, you will answer for your actions." The rebel leader's eyes flickered with a hint of regret, but it was too late. The Empress had spoken, and Marcus had made sure that her will would be carried out. As the room fell silent, Marcus turned to face the Empress, his breathing still heavy. She nodded at him, a small but meaningful gesture. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. Marcus simply nodded in return. He wasn't looking for thanks. He had done what he had set out to do, and for the first time in his life he realized that his duty was no longer just about protecting a leader. It was about protecting the future of a world that now looked to both him and Zarithia for hope. The echo of footsteps in the quiet hallway was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. Marcus and Zarithia moved swiftly through the corridors of the palace, the doors closing behind them with a soft hiss. The rebels had been defeated, but the fight was far from over. Varric's words still lingered in Marcus's mind. They weren't just dealing with a rogue faction. This was a well-coordinated conspiracy, a rebellion that had been simmering under the surface for years, and they had only begun to uncover its depths. Zarithia's eyes remained focused ahead, her posture still regal, despite the violence they had just endured. Her weapon, the energy blade she had wielded with such precision, now hung at her side, its glow dimmed. There was a sense of weight in the air as she moved, a weight that came from the burden of leadership, a burden that Marcus had only just begun to understand. The palace had always been a symbol of power. It was a place where diplomatic treaties were signed, where foreign leaders came to bend the knee, and where the fate of entire systems was decided. But now, in the wake of the attack, it felt like a house of cards, fragile, ready to collapse under the pressure. The halls were eerily silent, save for the sound of their footsteps. Most of the guards had fled, leaving the palace vulnerable. Some were loyal, some were not. The lines of duty had blurred, and Marcus couldn't help but wonder if this had been planned long before he arrived. They reached the throne room, and Marcus stopped at the entrance, standing guard as Zarithia stepped forward. The room was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the soft glow of holographic displays scattered across the walls. It was a place where the most powerful decisions were made, yet now it felt more like a tomb than a place of power. Zarithia paused before taking her seat at the grand throne. Her gaze swept over the room, her expression unreadable. Despite the outward calm, there was a storm inside her, one that Marcus could sense without needing to speak. She was processing everything, the betrayal, the attack, and the secrets that had been hidden from her for so long. "I didn't want this, Marcus," Zarithia said, her voice soft, almost wistful. "This rebellion, it has been brewing for years, and I never saw it coming. I've been so focused on maintaining order, on holding my people together, that I missed the cracks forming beneath my feet." Marcus stepped forward, his gaze never leaving her face.
No one can predict everything.
What matters is that we deal with it now, together.
Ziratia turned to him, her eyes searching his face as though trying to read him. It was a moment of silence, one where neither spoke, but the weight of their words hung between them.
The truth was undeniable. The rebellion had not been a random act of violence. It had been a carefully orchestrated plan to weaken her rule. The people who had abandoned her, the ones she had trusted, were no longer by her side. They had been part of the conspiracy, and Marcus could see the toll it was taking on her.
"You're right," she said after a long pause, her voice steady once more. "We have to deal with this."
But we need to find out who is behind this. Varric may have been the face of the rebellion, but there's more to it than just him.
He's part of something larger, something that wants to bring down everything I've built. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her words.
We'll find them. We'll stop them.
As he spoke, he couldn't help but notice the change in Zarithia. The calm, collected ruler he had seen earlier was beginning to show signs of cracking. There was a vulnerability to her now, a side of her that Marcus hadn't seen before. She was a queen, a ruler, but she was still human, and that humanity was something he had always admired about her. She turned back to the throne, her fingers gently brushing the armrest. I've spent my entire life trying to unite my people, trying to build something that would last. But now, it feels like everything is slipping away. You've built something strong, Marcus said, his voice firm. You've earned the respect of your people. This is just a setback.
You'll rise above it. Zarithia met his gaze, her eyes still filled with a mix of doubt and resolve.
I don't know, Marcus. I don't know if I can do it without you. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Marcus wasn't sure how to respond. He had been just a soldier, an outsider, someone hired to protect her, never expected to be part of something so much bigger than himself. But here, in this moment, with the fate of an entire civilization hanging in the balance, he realized that he couldn't walk away. He had already made his choice.
I'm not going anywhere,
he said, his voice steady.
I'm with you, Zarithia. We'll see this through.
Zarithia stood tall, her back straightening as she turned to face him. There was a new fire in her eyes, one that hadn't been there before. She was no longer just a queen. She was a leader, and she was ready to fight for what she had built. We need to find out who is behind Varric, she said, her tone sharp and decisive.
I need a plan. I need to take control of this before it's too late. Marcus nodded, his mind already working through the options.
We'll start by investigating Varric's movements, his allies. He didn't come here alone.
There's someone else pulling the strings.
Zarathia's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. I know who it is. Marcus glanced at her, surprised. Who? The High Council? She said, her voice a whisper. The ones who have always held power behind the scenes. They've been quietly undermining my rule for years. Varric was just their pawn. Marcus's mind raced as he processed her words. The High Council had always been a group of influential figures, the ones who whispered in the ears of leaders and shaped the direction of the planet. If they were involved, it meant the conspiracy went much deeper than anyone could have imagined.
They're the ones we need to go after, Zarithia continued, her voice gaining strength. If we take them down, the rest will crumble.
Marcus nodded again, his face hardening with resolve.
We'll go after them, one by one. No one is safe until we find out who is really in charge.
Zarithia stood up from the throne, her posture regal once more. Then we begin now.
I won't let this planet fall into chaos, not after everything I've sacrificed.
Together they turned and walked toward the hidden control room beneath the palace. It was a place few knew of, an old command center used during the planet's earlier days of colonization. It had been decommissioned, but now it would serve as the headquarters for their fight against the conspiracy that threatened everything they had worked for. As they descended into the depths of the palace, Marcus couldn't help but think about the journey ahead. They had a long road to travel, and the enemies they faced were numerous and well hidden. But for the first time, he believed that they could win. They had the strength, the will, and the trust in each other to succeed. Zarithia glanced over at him, her eyes softening for a moment before she spoke.
Thank you, Marcus, for everything.
He gave her a small smile. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. The dark hallways of the palace seemed endless, the only sound the soft clinking of their boots against the polished stone floors.
Marcus and Zarithia had descended into the hidden control room, a secret bunker buried deep within the palace. It was a place built for emergencies, but it had long been abandoned. Now, it was their only hope. The fate of her empire, and perhaps the galaxy, depended on the next few hours. The control room was dimly lit, its once advanced technology now covered in dust and cobwebs. The walls were lined with old terminals and holographic displays, their screens flickering faintly in the darkness. The room felt cold, as if time itself had forgotten this place. But for Marcus and Zarithia, it was a refuge, a base where they could plan their next move. Zarithia stood in front of one of the control panels, her fingers dancing across the keys with the grace of someone who had once commanded armies. She was no longer just the Empress. In this moment, she was a strategist, determined to reclaim her throne and her people. Marcus watched her closely, his thoughts racing. He had always admired her strength, but seeing her like this, fully focused and unyielding, made him respect her even more. She was no longer the distant ruler he had sworn to protect. She was a partner in this fight, someone he could rely on, someone who had earned his loyalty.
"We need to act fast," Zarithia said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The High Council is moving in the shadows."
They've already started preparing for war. If we don't stop them now, it'll be too late.
Marcus nodded, his eyes scanning the control room. What's the plan?
Zarithia paused, her fingers hovering over the holographic display.
"I've located their communications network," she said. "They've been hiding in plain sight, using encrypted channels to send orders and manipulate key leaders."
If we can break into their network, we can expose them. Marcus walked over to the display, peering over her shoulder as she tapped a few keys. A map of the planet flickered into view, showing various locations where the High Council's influence was strongest. The names of powerful individuals and key strategic sites appeared, each one linked to the rebel movement.
We can't take them all on at once, Marcus said, his voice low. We need to target the most vulnerable ones first.
The High Council members are spread out across the planet, each one holding a different piece of the puzzle. But the most dangerous one is Counselor Althera. She's the one who orchestrated Varric's rebellion. If we can capture her, we'll have a chance to break the whole operation.
Marcus's eyes narrowed. Where is she?
Zarithia's finger traced a line on the map, stopping at a location near the heart of the capital. She's holed up in the old military base. It's heavily guarded, but it's our best chance. Ooh. Marcus stepped back, his mind working through the details. We'll need a small team. Fast, precise. No room for mistakes. Zarithia nodded. Agreed.
But we can't go in blindly. We need to know everything about that base. Every guard, every camera.
If we don't have full intel, we'll be walking into a trap.
The atmosphere in the control room grew tense as the two of them worked together to formulate their plan. Time was against them, but every decision had to be perfect. Marcus could see the weight of it in Zarithia's eyes. She was a ruler, a leader, but in this moment, she was vulnerable, just like him. Together, they were fighting for survival, not just for themselves, but for everyone who depended on them. They spent the next few hours gathering intel, using the control room's old systems to hack into the military base's security feeds. The room was filled with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from the terminals. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, Zarithia leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the data.
I have it. We've got the layout of the base and the security patterns.
The guards rotate every hour, and there's a blind spot in the east wing. We'll use that to slip inside undetected. Marcus felt a surge of relief. They had a plan. It wasn't foolproof, but it was the best they had.
Let's move,
he said, his voice steady. Zarithia stood, her posture now regal again, but there was something different in her eyes. The fire that had been kindled in her during the fight earlier had only grown stronger. She wasn't just a queen anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with, and Marcus knew that with her by his side, they had a chance. As they prepared to leave the control room, Marcus turned to her. "You've got this, Your Majesty." Zarithia gave him a small smile, the first one he had seen since the battle in the palace. "We've got this, Marcus." They moved through the palace's hidden tunnels, emerging in the dark streets of the capital. The city was eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an unsettling stillness. The rebellion had shaken the very foundation of the city, and Marcus could feel the tension in the air. They reached the outskirts of the military base under the cover of darkness, blending into the shadows as they approached the perimeter. Marcus's hand rested on his sidearm, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The guards at the entrance were more alert now, their eyes scanning the area as they patrolled the perimeter.
"We wait for the signal," Sarithia whispered, her voice barely audible.
Marcus nodded. They had trained for moments like this, moments when every second mattered.
The plan was simple. Slip past the guards, get inside, and find Counselor Althera.
The rest would follow. As they crouched in the shadows, waiting for the right moment, Marcus couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought him here. He had been just a soldier, assigned to protect an alien queen. But now, he was fighting alongside her, not just for her safety, but for the future of her people. And in that moment, he realized that he had more to fight for than just his duty. He was fighting for something bigger, something that could change the galaxy. A few minutes later, the signal came. A guard on the far side of the base turned his back, and Zedia's hand signaled Marcus to move. They slipped into the shadows, moving with the quiet precision of ghosts. Every step was calculated, every movement planned. They reached the entrance to the base and paused, watching as the guards passed by. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady. They were so close. They had to make it through this last hurdle. With a final glance at Zarithia, Marcus stepped forward, his body tense as he moved into the opening. The cold steel of the door slid open silently, and they were inside. The base was a maze of metal corridors and dimly lit rooms. Every corner could hide a threat, but they kept moving, guided by the map they had studied and the intel they had gathered. They finally reached the main control room, the heart of the base. It was here that Counselor Althera would be, surrounded by her loyal guards. Marcus and Zarithia shared a brief glance before stepping into the room, ready for the confrontation that would determine the future of the rebellion. Counselor Althera was standing by a large terminal, her back to them. She didn't turn as they entered. She knew they were coming.
"You should have stayed out of this, Zarithia," Althera said coldly, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've become weak."
And now, you'll watch everything you've built crumble. Zaratia's voice was steady, but the fire behind her words was undeniable. "It's over, Althera. Surrender, and end this now." Althera turned slowly, her eyes flashing with fury. "You think you can stop me?"
You're nothing but a pawn in this game, just like your human soldier here.
Marcus stepped forward, his weapon raised, but Zarithia's hand stopped him. "No," she said, her gaze fixed on Althera. "You don't get to control this anymore." The final showdown had begun. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully theirs.